Hey guys, Mr. Cheeps here. We have gone over a lot of things related to rigid body simulations in this tutorial series, but today we're actually going to do some practical application and put together a full animation. Let's take a look at the animation we will be creating today. We are going to do some self-fracturing and constraint magic to create this. Let's jump into this tutorial. We need to start with some layout. Open a new blend file and leave the default cube, tabbing into edit mode. I'm going to scale it on the x-axis and the y, bringing up this edge to leave us with this grounded shape. I'm going to add in another plane under this and scale it up a lot. You can remove this flattened cube if you want to, but having this pedestal here will add a bit of variance into our simulation. Then I'll add in a cube. Tabbing into edit mode, I'm going to scale it on the y-axis and grab this top face up on the z-axis. Then I'll add in a loop cut and bring this edge forward to give us a nice little wedge. We need one more cube positioned above this wedge for us to hook it onto later with rigid body constraints, but no other modifications are necessary right now. Alright, now we need to add in a wall. Shift A for another cube, and once again we will enter edit mode. Scale it out, grab this top face, and take it up on the z-axis. Scale a bit on the y, and now we have a wall. Make sure this is sitting right above your ground. We are going to use the self-fracture add-on to get some fracturing in our wall. Go into your preferences to enable that add-on, and watch this video if you want to understand what all these different buttons are going to do. I'm going to use the annotation pencil to mark where I want these fractures to come from. I'm going to change the placement of the annotation pencil to surface so that it will draw on the mesh, and now I can just draw on some fracture lines where I think the wedge will collide with the wall. Once I'm done drawing my lines, I'm going to select the wall and hit the F3 key to bring up the search bar. Then we will type in self-fracture and find self-fracture selected mesh objects, using that to start the add-on. I'm going to click Own Verts and use Shift to select Annotation Pencil as well. That way it's going to fracture from what we just barely drew onto the wall, as well as give us some fracturing from the cube's original vertices. I'm going to change the source limit to 250 and change the noise to 0.5 and turn on 2 levels of recursion. I'm going to type cells into the collection box right here so all of the fractured meshes will go into their own collection. Then I'll just hit the OK button and let it happen. Now that we've got the cells, we need a simulation. Make both floors passive rigid body objects, as well as this pin cube up here. Then make the wedge an active rigid object, set its weight to 1000 kilograms, and change its shape to mesh. Remember how we made sure to put all of the fractured parts of the wall into their own collection? Right here is where that comes into play. We can right-click that collection and select all of the objects at once. Now we can click the Object menu in the top left corner of the screen and select Rigid Body Add Active. Then do the same thing but select Rigid Body Calculate Mass. I'm going to select Air here to keep the weight of everything pretty low. That way all the cells will be pushed like crazy when the wedge collides. If you actually want to make a fully realistic simulation though, I would make the weights of everything physically accurate. Keep them selected, click the Object menu one more time and hit Rigid Body Connect. Now they will all be active rigid body objects with connected constraints. I'm going to select all those constraints that were just generated and use the outliner to move them to their own collection. Then I will make one of them active and enter the Physics tab. I'm going to toggle Disable Collision so that it is off, and toggle Breakable so that it is on. Then I will right-click each of these boxes in order and click Copy to Selected. That way, that change will be copied to all of our selected constraints. At this point, your wall may still fall apart completely. To fix this, go to the Scene Properties in the Context menu and open the Rigid Body World dropdown. Increase the solver iteration so that the constraints will be calculated more, and now the wall should stay together. Now that the wall is set up, let's work on the swinging wedge. I'm going to add in an arrows empty. This will act as our constraint for the wedge so that it can swing. I'm going to position this between the wedge and this edge of the cube, about where a hinge would be. I'm also going to rotate the wedge real quick so that it has a way to build up momentum. Then I will go to the empty's physics properties and make it a rigid body constraint. I'm going to change its type to hinge and select both the passive cube and the active wedge. Nothing happens, and that's because we have to change the rotation of the empty so that the z-axis is pointing to the side. Once we've done that, this should work properly. If your wall is staying together upon collision, as you can see on screen, you may have to lower the breakable threshold for your constraints. That fixed the problem when I ran the simulation. We need to do a few quick things to make this simulation better. First, we need to move the center of gravity for the wedge down to its bottom. We can easily do this by entering edit mode, pressing A to select the whole mesh, and grabbing it on the y-axis to move the object center to the bottom. Now we can just leave edit mode and reposition the wedge, then we will be good to go. I'm also going to change a few settings under the rigid body world dropdown under the scene properties. I'm going to change the simulation speed to 0.8, then I will open up the cache dropdown and bake the simulation. Now we just need to do a bit of presentation work. I'm going to enter the camera view with 0 on the number pad and use Shift tilde to fly it around. I'm going to position it over here so that we have a pretty nice view. Let's do some lighting as well. I'm going to make an area light with a size of 20 meters and a very high strength value. Then I'm going to go to the world settings, make the color somewhat orange, and then I'll set the strength to 10. It's time for some materials. Let's start with the wedge. I'm going to make it completely metallic with a low amount of roughness, and I'm going to change its color to be pinkish red. For the ground, I'm going to do a mid-roughness value, about 0.4, and a more red color. I'm going to render my animation in Eevee, so I'll give this plane 0.1 subsurface and a yellow subsurface color. I would highly recommend to leave the subsurface value at 0 if you are rendering in cycles though. For the flattened cube, I'm going to apply the same shader as I did to the wedge. And for the cells, I'm going to select them all by right-clicking the collection in the outliner, and I'm going to Shift select one to make it active. I'll give this a new material, and then I'll hit Ctrl L and select Materials to make all of the cells use the same material. Now I can make this any color I want, and the rest of the cells will take that color as well. I'm going to do a bright red color with a bit of yellow-green subsurface scattering. For some Eevee settings, I'm going to toggle on ambient occlusion and screen space reflections. Because the scene is pretty bright already, I'm choosing to leave the bloom off. Past this point, just make any little adjustments that you would want to. You could edit this ground plane so that it curves up in the background, or you could round the corners on the pedestal or the wedge. You could also remember to toggle off Show in Render for this pivot cube before rendering your entire animation, like I did. And then you can just go into the output settings and choose a folder. I'm going to use the output type of FMMPEG video and choose for it to be encoded in MPEG-4 format. Then I will just hit Ctrl F12 and the animation will render out. So that is how to set up constraints for a rigid body wall break in Blender. Make sure to link the animation you create in the comment section of this video. I would love to see what you guys make with this. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.